Hello.
Hello. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for night 4, Thursday night, right?
Yep.
Around there.
Good. It is Thursday. Yes.
I don't even know what day it is anymore. I kind of lose track after a while. Yep, it is Thursday night 4 of Seek Week, and we're so grateful to everyone who has been joining us this week, including Dr. Glenn Patrick Doyle, who is pretty much just working, seeing clients right up until the moment we are starting this. So, Glenn, thank you for your dedication.
Hey, I'm a self-help guy. I believe in the grind. Rise and grind.
There you go.
That's right.
You can sleep when you're dead.
You can sleep when you're dead. Boy, if that's not a piece of James Arthur Ray wisdom.
And yeah, yeah, and it's a good segue into the topic for tonight. Yeah, so tonight we're talking about what is Seek after James Ray's passing. So of course, James Ray is the self-help guru who led the event, where my sister Kirby Brown and 2 other people, James Shore and Lisbeth Newman, died in 2009. So that was actually the yesterday. Yesterday was the 16th anniversary of that event. I realized after our live stream yesterday, I didn't even mention it. I'm always so focused on getting the live stream to happen that I didn't even mention it last night. But yeah,
I don't know if it was consistent with our vibe last night.
It wasn't really our vibe.
Right.
We were.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, and it's funny in a way. Like October 9th was the day that I found out. So it often stands out in my mind as, the day that the day prior, I didn't necessarily know what was going on. Right. Though I have told the story of how I lost my wallet that day because I left it on top of my car and drove away. And I think there was something kind of happening there, that some little energy shift in the world that I was clicking into and put me off for a minute. But
did you even know? Yeah. Did you know that Kirby was at Spiritual Warrior?
Yeah, I knew she was there. Mm-hmm. I didn't really know exactly like what it was all about, but I know that she had told me, she was going to this event. She had told me about it that the previous summer, because she was all like, "Oh my God, you got to watch The Secret." And I've gone to a couple of this guy's events now, and it's, it's pretty awesome. And yeah,
and she never got you to a James Arthur Ray event. Like I know Ginny.
No.
Ginny, you wound up with Kirby at one of his kind of intro seminars, right?
Yeah, what Kirby had experienced with James Arthur Ray before Sedona were 2 what he called harmonic wealth seminars, which were 2-day seminars in a hotel. So I went with her to Jersey City, where we experienced this 2-day seminar. And that was in March of 2009. And then in May of 2009, George and she attended the same event in San Diego. Mm-hmm. So both of us had experienced this guy and what he was about. Neither of us bought in completely. I was more impressed with him than George. George just came home saying, "Wow, that was business 101," and he's a great salesman. And I had, being a public speaker, I was impressed by his presentation style, but I experienced red flags there that, looking back, I feel ashamed that I didn't pay attention to them at the time. But just like what was getting described in the session last night, you're at an event like that and you get caught up in the spirit of it. And you really do put aside a lot of your own rational thinking, even when you're getting that feeling, I don't know, that I don't like the way he's handling this or doing this, Yeah. Mm-hmm. At any event, I have to tell you, for 16 years, October 8th has been a very hard day for us. knowing that this is the day that we lost our beautiful daughter, Jean's amazing older sister. And yesterday was the first anniversary that I decided I was going to work and not just take the whole day and maybe go up to the Arboretum and let myself. I felt her presence throughout the day, but it was also the first year. So we're talking 16 years ago, that at 8 o'clock in the morning, I didn't start to cry. Because the trooper came to our door at 8:15 on that morning to tell us that she had passed in a sweat lodge in Sedona, Arizona. And that began a whole chain of events. And I just, so I think it's just interesting. The grief journey continues always. And for people who have lost someone significant in their life, and for people who have lost someone suddenly and unexpectedly, I think anniversary dates are extremely important to pay attention to and to recognize how they trigger you on that day and to allow yourself to prepare for it. And in other years, I've just allowed myself to truly collapse on that day. And I think yesterday was the first time I just said, no, I'm not going to approach it that way this year.
You bet.
You know?
You bet.
And that's for other reasons too in my life, to try to keep things consistent together and routine and not upset for the sake of George. But, you know, grief continues, but the intensity sometimes diminishes a little bit. And the frequency with which you feel that blindsiding smack in the gut happens less frequently. So that has been my experience of what time has done for me in terms of feeling this loss and experiencing it. So when I'm talking about grief, it has nothing to do with James Ray.
Of course.
All it has to do is my gorgeous daughter is not here. And that's all I'm thinking about and concentrating on.
Yeah.
And I think from the very beginning, I tried very hard not to give him much space in my head.
Yeah. I remember when we were, planning Seek Week, and, we have a board meeting because we are a nonprofit, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So we have a board of directors. And so, months ago, we're sitting down saying, okay, what are we going to talk about each night? And somebody, it might have been you, Glenn. I don't remember. Somebody was like, well, what if we, talk about kind of like, what is Seek without James Ray? Since, that event was the catalyst for the formation of Seek Safely. And I was kind of like, oh, right, because he died this year.
Right.
Like I forgot about it, because it, for me as well, it's funny because on the Seek Safely podcast, James Ray's name does come up a lot, just because he did so many things that stand as the perfect example of some of the ills that we're talking about in the industry. But yeah, I didn't really give him a lot of space in my head either, to the point where I'm like, oh, that's right. Yeah, sure. We can talk about that. But
sure. Well, and the thing about it too, is that James didn't give you guys, to my understanding, a lot of reason to give him space in your experience. Like what occurs to me is that this horrible thing happened and only a handful of human beings were there, like physically present. And James, of course, was one of them. Of course, he caused it, but he was also there. And when he reached out to you guys after what happened, as one of the witnesses and one of the few human beings who could give you a firsthand account of what actually happened, he could have served a really constructive role in how you guys understood and processed what happened. But from, you guys talk about this in your book, and I mean, you've described this many times over the years. From the very beginning, he kind of made it about him. Like he was talking about it in terms of, this awful thing happened to me. Not even this awful thing happened to us. This awful thing happened to me. And didn't actually give you guys an opportunity to, like, I mean, he could have played a constructive role. Like, that's kind of the leitmotif of James's legacy, right? He could have played a constructive role in the industry. He could have played a constructive role even in your family's process.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was thinking, to kind of lead us off, we did put out a statement when he, after his passing, just because we figured people would maybe be curious about what we had said. So I figured I would read it. It's not very long. So so we said, it is with mixed emotion that we acknowledge the passing of James Arthur Ray, self-help guru who led the spiritual warrior retreat at which our family member Kirby Brown died in 2009. Knowing as we do the particular pain of unexpected loss, we extend our condolences to Ray's family and loved ones. They now face a profound and complicated challenge in integrating this loss into their lives. Death defies our irrational but persistent belief in the inevitability of living. While there could be some small measure of relief in knowing that Ray will no longer be able to harm anyone, it is truly very little comfort. It became clear to us early on after Kirby's passing that Ray was just one operator in a multi-billion-dollar per year industry built on the exploitation of those who would improve their lives and find fulfillment. The rot in this industry has always been much greater and more complex than the actions of a single so-called guru. James Ray was one among countless exploitative and dangerous self-help providers. Seek Safely was founded in this reality, that an entire industry, not just one man, was responsible for Kirby's death. Greater than any sense of relief is a feeling of disappointment that Ray could have played a unique role in helping to define both the problems and the solutions for this industry. But rather than demonstrating true transformation, he remained stuck in the paradigm of an industry built on manipulation and mistruth. We can only, at this juncture, remind seekers that no guru or program or mindset is larger than life or without fault, that a journey of self-improvement is noble and vulnerable, that we must always remain in charge of that process of growth and change, rooted in our values, our worth, and our right to seek free from harm. And so that's what we said publicly about it, and that really sums it up. I felt very like, yeah, sure, I was a little bit relieved that we didn't have to keep paying attention. It was kind of annoying to have to be thinking like, oh, what's he doing now? Knowing that he could be continuing many of the same behaviors that caused the death of 3 people in 2009. So that was always irksome, I would say.
It could be. He demonstrably was.
Yeah.
The only difference was with the kind of the culture shift around the pandemic, where in-person events were much fewer and farther between. So he was not doing the types of, and his ability to do those events had really taken a hit with his reputational hit after Sedona. So right after he got out of prison, he was trying, man. Like he was speaking and he was trying to throw together Harmonic Wealth weekends and these kinds of things, but the events were much smaller. And then the pandemic hit, and he got into the business of Zoom-based events, like distance-based events. And so you could say, well, sure, at least he's not initiating the physical challenges that he became really well known for, and that ultimately resulted in the so-called sweat lodge. Wasn't really a sweat lodge.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the philosophy and the business practice was the same, and it was still equally harmful. That's something that we've I think, done I hope a really good job of talking about on our podcast, is that Sedona didn't just happen because the sweat lodge malfunctioned. Sure, the sweat lodge was, again, it's not a sweat lodge, the heat endurance exercise, we'll call it, was horribly conceived and managed, and that's true. But that wasn't the problem.
Yeah.
The problem was the design of the entire event, and let's be honest, the entire ecosystem, and which reflects the entire industry.
The message, the philosophy behind it.
Yes.
It's interesting connecting Seek with James Arthur Ray, because Seek, as Jean said, the event was a catalyst for this organization. However, one of the things I had always felt was that when he would do something, very often media would come back to us to ask us for comment. So his presence in the world also, in some ways, was helpful to us in that, especially like after Enlighten Us came out, or when he was trying to set aside his conviction in Arizona. When events like that took place, media often came to us for comment. And so there was some advantage to that. And I remember saying that to people who were like so angry and upset that he was still around. And that was one of the first thoughts I had at his death, that, we have been so tied together. So now maybe people will also see that Seek exists not just because of what happened in Sedona and James Ray, but because that event caused us to learn that there's a lot of stuff that happens that is very potentially harmful emotionally, financially, intellectually, spiritually, and physically.
Yeah.
That all those areas can be harmed by people who have the same approach and the same philosophy that I have the answers. I am the guru. I have the answers, and you have to follow me and stay in my system, continuing to come to either my events or buy my materials or whatever, and believe and follow me in order to improve your life.
Yeah. I mean, like, we wouldn't have created an entire nonprofit organization just to, like, be a gnat in the side of one guy. Like, we created a whole organization.
I 100% would have.
We
I know you would not have. I would.
No, it's a lot of work running a nonprofit organization. We saw that the things that he did that were of concern and that ultimately led to the worst case scenario of people dying. Like, he was not the only one doing that kind of stuff. And that there was no guardrails on this industry, despite how much money there is, being poured into this industry by consumers every year. There was nothing that stopped him. And really, nothing that, had he not faced legal action due to the deaths, there was nothing that would have stopped him from continuing to do the same things. And then he did. Like, he got out of prison. He served his 20 months and he went back to, so he was barred from running a sweat lodge in the state of Arizona. But he could do everything else that, he wanted to do. And there was nothing stopping him. And we said, wow, this is like a real, overlooked industry in society.
Well, and that piece,
take away his license because he didn't have one.
He didn't have a license.
Take away his professional courtesy to practice because he didn't have a professional license of any kind.
Yes.
So, we've pointed that out continually about.
Yeah, he didn't get called up in front of his board of ethics because there is no board of ethics for the self-help industry. The self-help industry itself is this amorphous hodgepodge of tons of things that aren't otherwise regulated within other industries. So, yeah.
Well, and one of the reasons why so backing up a second, something I think about a lot vis-a-vis James and Seek is I would have never connected with Seek if not for James. Kind of my own journey with following his material, kind of becoming acquaintances with him. We were never really friends, but becoming acquaintances with him. And then becoming disillusioned with him and then contacting Seek. Like, I would not know you guys if not for James Arthur Ray, nor would this piece of advocacy, which has become really important to me, be a part of my life. But, I have a real personal dog in this fight that doesn't even have to do with a family member of mine that I lost. So my dog in the fight is, I've grown to know and love and kind of be part of your family, and so I do have that dog in the fight now. But my dog in the fight is I'm a self-help guy. I love the industry. I owe the industry in some ways my life, and I was so angry at James on a level other than what he did to people. Because he was, if you excuse my French, he was fucking up this opportunity that vulnerable people have to do what I did and use these materials to stay alive and to improve their lives.
Right.
He was, I often said of James, he was, among his other sins, he was a bad citizen of our community, of our self-help community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I really felt that needed to, like you said, well, we wouldn't have formed a nonprofit to take him down. Okay, but he needed to be, in my opinion, he also needed to be taken down. One of the, the aspect of his story, Gene, that you just brought up, so he got out of prison.
Mm-hmm.
He went right back to it,
mm-hmm.
trying to rebuild his business with minimal obstacles. Like the only obstacle he really faced was the reputational damage he had sustained.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he was trying really hard to turn that into a plus. Like he was trying really hard to leverage that actually as part of his story, as his redemption arc. But I always equated, I know we've talked about this on the podcast so much, but I've always equated James to, you remember Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes?
Mm-hmm.
That whole story?
Mm-hmm.
So once the Theranos fraud was discovered, and part of Elizabeth, so Elizabeth Holmes did go to prison. She's in prison now, but if and when she ever gets out of prison, part of her consequence is she's barred from being the CEO of a company.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are structures in place to say that no, you don't get to do that anymore. If I, as a licensed psychologist, had a session or a group or something where people died due to my negligence, they would take away my license and say, you're not allowed to do that anymore. You're not allowed to be a counselor. You're not allowed to be a therapist. You're not allowed to be, right? I'd have to be a self-help guru. but there's no, like that was kind of the craziest part of this is there was nothing stopping him except
Well, and you brought up another point that I think also kind of influenced our decision to start a nonprofit organization. You said, like, he really made the industry look bad, which is true. It was a high profile event. It was in the news. There was a lot about it and it was just awful.
And he was a famous guy at the time. Like he was one of the leaders of the industry.
Exactly. He was like the next Tony Robbins. So, and he was part of The Secret, which was so big. So it was disturbing that nobody else did speak out about him. No other big names in the industry were willing to come out and have a conversation about it, or even, make a statement, including Oprah, who really spotlighted him.
Right.
And, that I think says a lot. That really, I think, made me go, I don't know how much integrity many of these people have.
Absolutely.
Because I think they felt their first instinct was to protect themselves and distance themselves. Like, oh, that's just some like crazy guy who was like doing weird stuff in the desert. And it's like, no, he was on Oprah. He was on the Today Show. He was very, very mainstream.
You bet.
And none of these people were willing to really speak out and say, you know what, there's a problem in our industry. I'm a part of this industry. I want it to be better than this. I don't want it to be a place where people can go to an event and lose their life. So what do we have to do to make sure that doesn't happen again?
Mhm.
Nobody was willing to do that.
No one
And
did.
then it was like, okay, well, I guess we need to keep talking about this and make other people continue to talk about it, because they're not going to do it. They are not going to make the industry better.
Right. I mean, that became clear when we created the promise and
Mhm.
then contacted over 350 people in the industry requesting them to sign the promise.
Yeah.
And we either got no response or
Mhm.
we got threats of being sued,
Right.
for even contacting them with such an idea.
Yeah.
I was so taken aback by that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is bizarre.
You know what I will say about the promise? We have over 400 signers of the promise.
Mhm.
I would venture to say none of them are famous people.
Right.
None of them are big names in the industry. So what I will say is that represents to me the fact that there are literally hundreds of people, practitioners in the self-help industry, who do want to do it the right way.
Mhm.
Right. And that has been like heartening to us. So even if the big guys are, too concerned with protecting their empire, they don't want to touch us. There are a lot of people out there who want to do the right thing, and that's also part of why we exist.
Mhm.
There was at least one wildly popular internet celebrity that did sign the Seek Safely promise. Let's acknowledge.
That's true. I'm sorry. Diminishing your
And that was
fame.
before I was a thing, man. That was even so, well, and we know the reason for that too. Like so I was thinking, so for example, it's well known that James got into. So if you guys go back a few nights ago on my after party live stream, I talked about James a lot. We told the whole story of Sedona and kind of what he was about and whatnot. So if you're interested, go back and do that. But James famously became interested in being a self-help guy because he was struggling. He was working as a telemarketer. His life wasn't really working. And he went to a Tony Robbins event. And at the Tony Robbins event, he's like, man, I could do this. And he kind of put that guy in his head, like I'm going to do this, right? So it would have, if anybody, it would behoove, I mean, besides Oprah, to make a statement, it would have been Tony Robbins. And you can't tell me Tony Robbins didn't hear about this, right?
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why Tony Robbins is never going to make that statement is because, one, Tony Robbins does a whole lot of, like, he's Mr. Firewalk, right? Like he does a lot of the very similar physical challenges. Where do you think
There's
James
a lot
got all
of
these
risky
ideas?
shit.
Right?
Yeah.
And in addition, if we're going to broaden the conversation from the physical challenges that were ill-conceived and irresponsibly managed, and go to like the hard sales techniques and the draconian no refund policies and kind of the financial exploitation and the sales pressure and these kinds of things, Tony Robbins can't make that statement condemning James because it's going to invite lots of people to say, no, well, now wait a minute.
Yeah. You do the
That's what
same
you do.
stuff. Yep.
These look a lot like the same picture that management wants you to find the difference between the two, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was definitely part of it, realizing that, okay, I don't think Tony Robbins wants people to die at his events. I don't think anybody really wants
Of course.
that.
And neither did James.
No, but they knew at a very clear-eyed level that they're doing things that are manipulative or questionable or shady. Like they know that they're doing the things too that really should invite some criticism, and so they just didn't want to didn't want to touch it, didn't want to
or
acknowledge
at the
it.
very least, some caution, right? Like go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, in the early days when I really started spending a tremendous amount of time researching and looking at people in the industry, and I tripped across an actual group that were coming together for yearly seminars to talk about doing self-help. And what I discovered was what they were discussing was how to make money and how to be coercive and how to be, they weren't calling it that, but they were saying, this is what people need. This is what they have to have. And any kind of, attempt to even have anyone answer back an email or a phone call to me was completely out of the question. It never happened because they didn't want that group of people, and some of them, are fairly famous and are making pretty decent livings, but they're also using a lot of the sales tactics and the coercive language and the, shaming type behaviors, but those cult-like tactics to create suggestibility and compliance were being taught.
Yeah.
If you want to be in this industry, these are the things that are going to make you successful.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's tied to an understanding, I think, in the self-help world. I think it's part of kind of a certain strain of thought. I don't think it's the entirety of the self-help culture, but there's definitely a strain of thought in the self-help world among writers and gurus and stuff that the people who seek their services, like their judgment cannot be trusted and doesn't need to be taken seriously, because if they had their shit together, they wouldn't be coming to the seminar, right? So they are incented to to create an ecosystem where it's a very hierarchical, top-down kind of domineering thing. And they understand that it's important to know, like they understand that, the gurus understand that, as they're doing them a favor. We're doing them a favor in initiating this power heavy, because these people, come on, they need to get their shit together, and they need to surrender their autonomy, and they need to go all in. That's one of James's favorite. They need to go all in, and their problem in their life is they haven't gone all in. And come on, right?
Get out of your comfort zone.
You bet.
Yeah.
You bet.
Yeah. So how to do that in a way that is both ethical and safe for an individual is part of what our goal has always been.
Like I guarantee that if the subset of gurus that we're talking about, I guarantee that if they were exposed to the Seek Safely Compass tool, right, that's supposed to keep people on track with kind of their values and their goals and who they are and their authenticity, et cetera, et cetera. I guarantee that if the gurus we're talking about got a whiff of this, their feedback would be like, that's going to keep you stuck in your journey. That's going to keep you stuck in your head. That's going to keep you stuck in your past and blah, blah. You're here to transform.
Right. You're here to leave the past. Okay.
Exactly.
And the goal really in bettering yourself is how to integrate your past into a better future.
That's it.
Trying to figure out a way to do that. And, going back to a comment I made earlier about grief, I think it's important for me, it's been very important from the very beginning after this happened, that this event, this horrible tragedy that kind of blew up our life and our family in many ways, was not going to fall victim. He wasn't going to get another victim out of our family by us being so angry or so immobilized by rage or sadness that we weren't going to be able to function. And the idea of then taking this and creating some kind of meaningful avenue to pour some of that emotion into, to say, damn it, no, we're going to make a difference here. We're going to try to help both make this industry better and more accountable. And we're really going to try to work with the people that are seeking to help them get what they deserve, not be scammed, not be led astray, not be taken advantage of, but really get what they deserve, and to keep some of their own personal integrity, even as they were doing their transformation, not someone else's, but their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that, when you said change is about learning how to integrate your past into, who you are so that you can find your future. I feel like that is a metaphor for grief as well. Like you can't just ignore or deny the significant loss. You have to figure out how to let it be part of your life and your story, but then how to, keep going forward and understand that it changes you and it changes things. But you can still go on after that. Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of the same idea,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Jane.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about, though, is a very realistic, nuanced model of how human beings work. And of course, we're talking about it like Jenny's a therapist. I'm a therapist. Like, I mean, we have lots of experience in lots of rooms.
I have two therapist parents, so that's my credential.
And Jean has two therapist parents, right? We have lots of experience in lots of rooms with vulnerable, suffering human beings, and lots of experience with seeing how change, long-term change that sticks, really works, and how that really happens.
Right.
So we know that it's never going to be a matter of, you can transform everything in the blink of an eye and just change the story you're telling yourself and whatnot. Like, we know that change does happen, and radical transformation does happen. It rarely happens the way that large group awareness trainings sell it, right? But we know that it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what I think a subset of self-help consumers are really worried about and afraid of is that this model of change that we're talking about, that maybe moves a little slower, that maybe involves confronting really painful things and working through it, and is really authentic and real. And a subset of folks are really worried that they're not up to it and that they can't do it. And now that's not true. But they have what I call it. They've got BS in their head. They've got belief systems. It's also the other kind of BS. But that, I can't do it. I'm not up to it. Like that's old programming that teaches them that they're up to it. But the seduction of James and again a subset of self-help products and services, like we were talking about the other night, is they sell that bypassing thing, and they glorify it as a feature, not a glitch. They're like, man, like you actually don't have to do the work, Jenny, that you're talking about of processing and integrating and whatnot. That's old defeatist talk. That's stuck in the past. James would say that to me on Twitter all the time before he blocked me.
You're stuck in the past.
Yeah, right. Like you're trying to keep people stuck in the past. Like you Mr. Trauma. You're trying to keep. He called me Mr. Trauma. Mr. Trauma. You're trying to keep people stuck in the past.
Yeah.
And to me, that's first of all, what a profound misunderstanding of what I do. But of course, he profoundly misunderstood what I do because he has no.
He has no background. He has no ability to understand that because he's on a completely different track. I was with someone today, a client today. We were talking about how, experiences in your life that are so difficult and traumatic and it starts to shape the way you think and the way you automatically are going to react to certain kinds of triggers, right? And the goal is to both recognize the trigger, understand why they're there, and then create some new neural pathways. Well, it takes a long time to create neural pathways. It's not something that happens overnight in an experience that's just exciting in the moment. It's something that requires insight and tons of practice over and over again, and confronting those thoughts that are just not true. I can't do this. This is beyond me. This is ridiculous, with the encouragement that, no, you can, but it's going to take some time. Okay, let's figure this out, and someone believing that you can and is on your team and is there for you.
Well, I think, it's funny too, like one of the things that, again, I think getting back to this idea of what is the purpose of Seek beyond James Ray, after James Ray, when you have an industry that's promising with this kind of radical transformation, even if they're selling something that's not maybe necessarily attainable, but just if it was, if it was possible to radically, like overnight, transform your life, one of the messages that we've kind of given to people too over the years is like that can go either way. So you really have to be careful. Like change isn't a guarantee of change. It's going to get better. Like you could have a very, very profound experience that could be a bit damaging or dangerous for you. I feel like when you open yourself up to that possibility of change, it's like you're a bit on a knife's edge and you could kind of fall either way. And opening yourself up to that sort of vulnerability really deserves a lot of careful thought and putting some sort of safety nets in place to catch you if you go in a way that you didn't really expect to or intend to.
Oh, you bet. Well, I've said it. If I've said it once, I've said it dozens and dozens of times in public, that change that happens to our nervous system in short, intense bursts is almost always harmful. So we think of when trauma happens, when flashbulb trauma happens, like a car accident or a terrorist attack, like, yeah, that'll change your nervous system all at once. And it's terribly destructive, but also change that we think is good. It does violence to how human beings are supposed to change. Like if suddenly I found out I was a zillionaire and my lifestyle was radically different, I might think that's a good thing. But we've seen lots and lots of stories of people who get sudden influxes of like they win the lottery or whatever, and then they go on to destroy themselves because they're not ready for that, right? Like they haven't evolved into that. They haven't grown into that. Again, so change that happens to our nervous system is almost always destructive. The fact that change takes a long time is actually the good news, right? Because we have time to process it. We have time to adjust to it. We have time to grow into it.
Personalize it.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, we've seen a million movies, right? Where you go from being a 10-year-old to being a 30-year-old. And is it like, does it go well from day one? No, it's a disaster. And then they have to like slowly work it out. It's kind of the same thing. Like,
absolutely.
Even that expectation of instantaneous transformation is faulty. When you really put a little bit of thought into it, you go, oh yeah, maybe that's not such a good idea.
Right.
It's not the lasting change, I think, that happens instantaneously. I think sometimes it's an incredible insight that makes sense to you, or something that is incredibly motivational, that you're inspired by. Those can happen quickly, but then to make them work into real change within that's sustainable and real, that's where it takes time. You were talking about before, Jean, about grief. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
We need time to integrate what happens and to allow ourselves to grow into it.
Yeah. And, seeing somebody drive a car doesn't mean that you're going to be able to just drive a car. There's still learning that needs to happen, right? So you can have the inspiration and see what you're after, but you still have to practice and learn in order to be able to do it yourself.
Kind of circling back around to James, the question was asked in the chat, like, do we have any sense of when he tried to make his big comeback? Do we have any sense of how successful he actually was? And it's a funny question to ask, because as it turns out, we don't even have a sense of how successful he was when he was supposedly Mr. Harmonic Wealth. Part of his brand before prison was, I can make you rich, right? And he was well known for, like, he was one of these guys who was going to he was kind of in the tradition of the Rajneesh guy, Osho, who was like, I'm going to detoxify material wealth, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to be rich, and it can be, you can be rich and spiritual. That was one of his shticks. And so James really liked talking about how he wanted to be the first, spiritual self-help zillionaire and stuff. And then the tragedy happened, and lawsuits happened. And part of what happened to the lawsuits was we discovered he was deeply in debt, and it wasn't nearly as materially successfully as he was advertising and whatnot. So we don't even know, with the exception of, like, yeah, he got very famous very quickly. But I think it's actually a stretch to say that he was, even successful before all this happened. Now, when he came back, it's kind of interesting, because as he was trying to rebuild his career, he was doing so not on the coattails of Oprah. In fact, very the opposite, right? Like, he was doing so, kind of shackled by what had happened, and he was trying to find a way to, like, on the one hand, he was trying to lean into it and leverage it and rebrand, kind of using Sedona, right? It's really gross. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, he was also trying new things. Like he was trying to get away from it. Like he was trying to like, very near the very end of his life, he got very political, and really fell in with kind of alt-right style politics, and was a big fan of the Make America Great Again movement stuff, and he was really trying to rebrand in that sense. He was calling himself a minister. I don't know if you guys saw that, like right before he died, he was, and this things that he was writing he was trying to kind of cram it into a kind of a woo Christian.
Wasn't he also, like, doing marriage therapy because he had gotten married? So then he was a relationship expert.
Yeah, he was on a bunch of podcasts with his wife. And it's funny because he got married to this woman, Berzabah, who he then, I don't know if she would have been on this trajectory anyway, but he was trying to brand them as a power couple. Like, all of a sudden she was this intuitive, and she's still doing that, by the way. Like she's still trying to carry on the brand, doing her spiritual intuitive work and that kind of stuff. But the short answer is, we don't actually have a sense of how successful he was. We know that I can tell you this: he did nothing but bleed social media followers. He got banned from Instagram, I think, for spreading misinformation around COVID. So he promptly took over his wife's Instagram. Mm-hmm. So it's not the case that he was on his way to rebuilding his empire. But it was kind of interesting to watch him try, because it's like, well, he was suddenly in the same boat that a lot of other practitioners are, like just kind of scrounging for a piece of the pie, and not really having anything to, James, without The Secret and without Oprah to really catapult him, there wasn't much there actually. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, he could be a charismatic, kind of engaging guy, and he was a good salesman, but he didn't have many original ideas. He didn't really have, what was that? There are a bunch of Jameses out there, and I think he was feeling that kind of heat.
I think it's funny too. So, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and we really don't know how he died. Why?
Yeah.
He wasn't, from my point of view, he was a youngster. He was young. He was a lot younger than me.
Sure.
And it was sudden. So, it came as a shock to his family, and we don't know what happened. And that there's sadness there too. Like, we said in our statement, I think, sudden death is difficult, for those around you. But it's troubling to me that the cause of his death has not been revealed.
Ooh, we've got in the chat. He died of. Do we know that he died of liver and kidney failure? I had not heard that.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that either.
I hadn't heard it, but it's possible. I know that there were people who were kind of trying to access the death record, so it's possible that was accessed.
I mean, it's interesting from the broader sense that he talked about health a lot, so he was one of these guys who he really wanted to be the all-in-one guru. Like he didn't believe in specialization. So his book Harmonic Wealth is like the model for harmonic wealth. I could talk about this with Christine Whelan for years, but the model of the book Harmonic Wealth, he actually modeled it on Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins, which is one of the first self-help books where it's not going to be about one thing or the other. It's not just going to be about health or finances or whatever. It's an all-in-one manual for how to improve your life. And there are chapters in Harmonic Wealth about health and finances and
relationships.
Relationships, and so it's notable that. So here's Mr. Health. He was very proud of the fact that he used to be a competitive bodybuilder. He had very strong feelings about vaccinations. He had very strong feelings about what to eat, what not to eat. And, oh God, he had strong feelings. I just remembered this. He had strong feelings about what kind of exercise to do. So you guys know I'm a distance runner. And one time I was staying at Ginny Brown's house and I went out for a 10-mile run and I came back and Ginny says, "How do you do it?" And I said, "Self-help." She thought it was funny. But James had this is the weirdest thing. He had strong feelings. He was anti-running. He says, "I would not run if my house is on fire. I would not run to get out of my house." He said, "Y'all, you just got to lift weights like real men lift weights. You got to move some metal, buddy." And I found that so strange that he had such strong feelings about whatever cardio versus strength training. But the point is, yeah, he felt that he knew the stuff, and here he is suddenly passing away at a not terribly old age. So it's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, he at one point after he got out of prison, he was, doing like a health weekends where you could, learn how to eat healthy with him and, get nutrition advice and go to the gym with him, get fitness advice.
That's right. He was. I didn't know. I just remembered that. You're right.
And I think he also got into like cryotherapy, like cold plunge type stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it was like, I don't know, did you go do a degree in, nutrition work, or have you become a personal trainer? Like there's, like, why are you?
I haven't thought about that for years, Gene, but yeah, you and I used to talk about this because he would do his event where he would drag folks. One day he would drag them to the cryotherapy place. And then one day he'd drag them to the gym.
Yeah. And I like, like I said, I wasn't letting James live rent free in my head, but I did, when I saw that, I did maybe call the gym where he was bringing people. And I said, "I think you might want to know that this guy is like leading group exercises at your gym and he killed 3 people." So I don't know what they did with that information, but I was like, "Meh, you might want to know."
So I think we go back to our original question. How does this affect us as an organization? And I think the answer is it doesn't affect our mission.
Yeah.
Because our mission was not about eradicating James Ray. It was about examining and trying to better the industry itself, encouraging those who were practitioners who had ethics and were aware of safety, and at the same time help the consumer to be maybe more discerning and more understanding of their own vulnerabilities so that they could protect themselves better. So that's our mission. So we exist and will continue existing even though he's no longer here.
Mm-hmm.
And we started because of him and because of our tragedy and because of our loss. But we will continue to be here.
Yeah.
Because the mission is much bigger than him.
Yeah. And, you know, I think the because of him is only because he took Kirby from us.
Mm-hmm.
I think really why we exist is because of Kirby.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that, you know, Kirby was the ultimate seeker. And we know that that impulse in her was a very beautiful part of who she was. And that there are many, many other people out there like her who just want to get the best out of their one precious life that they can. And they should be able to do that without concern of harm, you know. So that's really why we exist. And I mean, Kirby has been gone for 16 years and Seek Safely still exists.
Mm-hmm.
So James Ray not being here, it doesn't change that either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If there's anything that James Arthur Ray's legacy can be vis-a-vis the movement and the industry, what I hope is he can be a cautionary tale
Mm-hmm.
of what happens when you get too big too fast. Because I think part of what happened to James was, look,
did he have a radical overnight transformation that maybe actually wasn't a great thing?
and maybe a little too much too fast and his nervous system couldn't handle it. Yes, I think that's partially what happened. I think that, look, would it have been a little better for James? Because look, there's a part of me that's always going to remember kind of what I saw in James once upon a time, and you know, think, man, if he did not have if he was in an industry other than self-help, like let's say he connected with an interest in helping people, because I do think he was interested in helping people. If he connected to that interest in helping people,
and actually got some education on how to do that.
Right. Like if he went and earned a master's degree in counseling and had to do training sequences and had to write a dissertation and these
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things. One of the things that was interesting about James, like I don't want to get back in this conversation, but one of the things that was interesting about him was he was constantly pretending to have credentials. He was constantly talking about how he'd been trained as a shaman in Peru. That turned out not to be true. And how he'd been trained as a huna in Hawaii. And that turned out not to be true. So there was a part of him that wanted that credibility. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was just marketing. Like, I think there was a part of him that really wanted to be an authority. But I think part of what happened to him was he happened to be in The Secret. He got that gig. It catapulted him to fame. And he had a choice in that moment of like, well, man, I can strike while the iron's hot and take my shot to be a big thing in the industry. Or I can do the responsible thing and learn a little more about how people work and how human nature works and whatever. And he went the dark side route, the quick and easy route.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he was well served by that. And it's a drag. So what I hope a part of his legacy is for folks who want to do what he did. And I want to do a version of what he did, right? That's why I write things on the internet. That's why I have an audience. That's why I put energy into this. I hope it'll be a cautionary tale to people like me and others that say, look, that model of what he did is not sustainable. It's not, ultimately, it's not helpful to the very people whose life you want to improve. And ultimately, it probably won't result in the kind of fame and riches that you hope. Like the Tony Robbins story is a really aberrant story.
Mm-hmm.
Right? as evidenced by the fact that he's still the guy. Like he's still like there aren't
Yeah.
a bunch of Tony Robbinsons, right?
So I like what you said, Jean, that, Seek really exists because of Kirby. And it's Kirby's spirit and Kirby's energy. She would say it's important to live with purpose, passion, and joy. And grow. Let yourself grow. Let yourself be the best that you can be. And that message, which we try to really articulate in a comfortable way to consumers, and ask practitioners to help people, to guide them to those kinds of goals in their life. But it's with that spirit that exists and will continue to exist.
You bet.
Exactly. So, on that note, if Seek is going to continue to exist, we do need money. So, but all of you being here and listening and participating in the conversation is also very, very much appreciated. And again, as we've said, if you can share this with other people that you know, we will be back tomorrow night, our final night of Seek Week. We will be talking about, Seek's goals for the near future coming up, what you can expect from us. So share with your friends, and if it is in your in the possibility for you right now to contribute, we do very much appreciate your financial support as well. Here, I got it right on the first try this time, guys. There's our little QR code. You can go there to donate. You can check out our website, seeksafely.org. We also have fundraisers up on Facebook. You can and Instagram. You can donate through links there as well. And thank you everyone for being with us. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Glenn.
I think it's so appropriate that we ended with kind of that heartfelt, those things that Jenny was saying. Jenny has a way of doing this, right? Like Jean and I will talk the entire time, and then Jenny will like sum it up in such an elegant, evocative way. And I remember vividly, I think it was Seek Week, was it a couple years ago, where Jenny was talking and she was on fire, like you really hit it. And then as it turned, what happened as it turned out, was it on the podcast maybe?
It was an early iteration of the podcast. Yes. I hadn't been recording. I live with this fear all the
we're
time.
Not recording. And then we were like, Jenny, can you get it back?
God.
Anyway.
Yes.
All right, gang. We're going, if you head back to the Dr. Glenn Patrick Doyle page, after party starts, give me about 10 minutes to crack a Diet Coke. And we'll talk some more. Thanks for showing up.
Thank you, everybody. We'll be back, like I said, tomorrow, same time, same places, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Yes.
Ciao, ciao.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. And thank you to all who have contributed to keep us alive. Thanks.
Thank you.